The Phaedo is a dialogue that recites a conversation between Socrates and his friends on the day of his execution. The conversation turns into a debate about death, the soul, and the afterlife. The people surrounding Socrates are sad about his awaiting death, but Socrates reassures them that he is cheerful and comfortable with the thought of death. He says that a true philosopher should look forward to death. Socrates stated that the soul is immortal, and life is spent to train the soul to be able to detach itself from the needs of the body. To quote Socrates, he said, "I desire to prove to you that the real philosopher has reason to be of good cheer when he is about to die, and that after death he may hope to obtain the greatest good in the other world." He explains that men can only attain wisdom after death, because only then is the mind liberated from the distractions of the human body. The body is a source of endless trouble to us by reason of the mere requirement of food, and is liable also to diseases which overtake and impede us in the search after true being. It fills us full of loves, lusts, fears, fantasies, and endless foolery, and, in fact, as men say, take away from us in the power of thinking at all. The soul in herself must behold things in themselves, and only then we shall attain the wisdom which we desire, not while we live, but after death. Socrates then goes on to support this claim with 4 arguments. These arguments are 1. The cyclical argument, 2. The recollection theory, 3. The affinity argument, and 4. The argument from the form of life. The cyclical argument states that opposites are formed from opposites. For example, for someone to be tall, we must know what being short is, and for someone to be fast, there needs to be perception of being slow. So according to Socrates, since life was the opposite of death, he thought that life is generated from death, just as death is generated from life. The recollection theory claims that we have knowledge of abstract ideas, such as beauty, equality, and justice, only because we learned from them in a former life. Because we have had knowledge at birth and can forget it, suggests that our soul existed before we were even born. The affinity argument states that there is a great distinction between things that are immaterial, invisible, and immortal, and things that are material, visible, and perishable. The body belongs to the second category, being material, visible, and perishable, whereas the soul can be classified as the first category, immaterial, invisible, and immortal. This notion suggests that the soul must be immortal and has the ability to survive death. And lastly, the argument from the form of life claims that the soul is immortal because the soul is the form or the cause of life. Things that are alive possess a soul, just as fire, which causes heat, can never be cold, and just as snow, which causes cold, can never be hot. So the soul, which causes life, can never be dead. After all this, Socrates finishes his arguments and takes a bath. He then says his final farewells to his family and friends. Then he drinks the poison and drifts from this world onto the next. And now on to my personal opinion about Phaedo. I thought the story and concepts within were very interesting and intellectual, and it was very entertaining for me to read and try to understand. I don't really agree with Socrates' arguments about life and death and the soul, but still the thoughts intrigued me. And the whole concept wasn't too hard for me to understand. I think the part about the recollection theory was more challenging to grasp, But I think that since the whole writing was organized in like a story manner or a fiction form, it made the concepts easier for me to understand. And I recommend this reading because it has interesting ideas to think about and it's pretty easy to understand compared to most other philosophical works.